family. I am here with a magical moment of young musicians. And this is Kim, Sister Kim, and she has a message about investing into the future musicians of our community. Sister Kim, tell us what you got here.
Hi everyone, Kim, proud parent of children at the Big Apple Leadership Academy for the Arts. We teach HBCU high-stepping marching band to our kids from age 5 and up. It is a free after-school program, tuitionless, and it's open to all. Our kids are amazing. If you can, jump on our website. We're looking for support, donations. Our kids need new instruments so that they can high step on. Our website is www.balaa.org, BALAA.org. And I appreciate the time. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And so family, listen up close. We're talking about investing in the artists of tomorrow. By investing in them, if you have a little expendable change to invest in the youth, the genius, this is the opportunity. And in this description on this video will be the details of sending your donation to PayPal or Zelle or Cash App.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you for your support. Our children are the future.
Welcome to magnets, crystals, and pyramids. Success is your destiny. Yes. Love, wisdom, power. Remember always.
Greetings and welcome, family. I just want to make sure my sound is okay. Welcome to a special show featuring Dr. Kamau Kokayi. I don't know what Doc has got cooked up for us tonight, but I'm sure it's going to be enlightening. As we always say at the beginning of the show, thank you for being born. Thank you for being alive. We had fantastic guests on last night. Incidentally, medical doctor, brain surgeon, and his associate. And they were talking about how your thoughts influence the physical function of the brain, what the brains and the blood cells look like. It was an incredible show. And so tonight we follow up with a mystical, medical, holistic practitioner, Dr. Kamau Kokayi. Before we begin, we always acknowledge the ascended masters who upon their shoulders we ride. So we thank and invite Yeshua, Mary Magdalene. We thank and invite Black Madonna, Mother Mary. We thank and invite Saint Germain. We thank and invite Simeon Toko. We thank and invite Nikolai Tesla. We thank and invite Sanat Kumara. We thank and invite Enoch, the Ethiopian who ascended into the heavens and became Metatron. We thank and invite Imhotep, Ptahotep, Akhenaten. We thank and invite Lady Buddha, Lady Krishna, Angel of Healing, Archangel Raphael, and most of all, my fellow Jedi gods and goddesses, We acknowledge the forces of nature that live inside of us. Ilegba, Oshun, Yemaya, Oya, Olokun, Shango, Ogun, Obatala, Ochosi, Orumila. We thank and invite Wakantanka, Tankashila. We thank and invite White Buffalo Calf Woman. We thank and invite Nat Turner, John Brown. We thank and invite Chief Osceola, Chief Crazy Horse, Chief Sitting Bull, Chief Geronimo. We thank and invite all the warrior healers throughout time. We thank and invite Credo Mutwa, South African Zulu shaman. We thank and invite all the medicine women, all the shamanic, acoustical masters. And without further ado, we say Ashe, Mahalo, Donada, Wado, Amen, Amin. And let's bring on Dr. Kamau Kokayi. What's up, Doc?
Hank, I love it, man. I love your intros, man. You really hit it on so many levels, man. Just dropping science right off of people just to follow up on the things that you're sharing and stuff, you know. And what I really love is how you acknowledge the nature that's in each one of us. And that's a good place to start because different cultures acknowledge or organize that natural world that's within us differently. So on the one hand, you mentioned about the elements and nature being in our body. And then on the other hand, in African traditions, they break it down even more because they actually talk about aspects of consciousness, right, that embrace maybe one or more elements, right?
Wow.
So it's very sophisticated, right? And then when you compare in homeopathy, right, how you actually get the essence, the spiritual essence of that plant, animal, seed, whatever it is. And again, you're taking in that energetic template, that blueprint into your body as a frequency that then has an impact on whatever's going on with you. So right off, the whole thing of how do we represent what's actually going on in the body? Is it all just about histology, physiology, pathophysiology? You know, so the thing is, if a system is limited, right, then the understanding that's derived from it will also be limited. And what makes me think about, and this ties into one of your areas of expertise, when we actually talk about the human cell, right, we acknowledge, right, there's a nucleus, there's a cytoplasm, there's, you know, the cell wall and membrane, but what about the actual energy in the cell? What about the prana, the chi, the electromagnetic aspect? The electromagnetic reality of our makeup was, I mean, it's been acknowledged in different ways. You see the work of Tesla, there's Maxwell and Faraday, there's Reinhold Voll. This is all in the West, right? But all of it is really after the fact relative to what other cultures have known and actually used in very fundamental ways. You know, we look on cultures where they don't write somehow and say that, you know, automatically they take a step down, but then you look at the amount of information that can be stored in crystals. Right.
Doc, you're hitting on it. I got my crystals on.
You know
Doc,
what I'm saying?
Yeah, man.
There's information. So that's another side to Hank's crystals, because you think you're wearing something nice and it has a nice energetic thing, but these frequencies carry information. So part of what's happening is that, I mean, look at how even on a 3D level, people are getting their information differently. People used to read books.
Yeah, used to.
People aren't reading books, right?
Right.
they're doing video. It's sound thing. I'm fascinated by Instagram. I allow myself just to go through there maybe 5 or 10 minutes a day. Why? It's amazing what human beings can do. When I'm looking at some of the actual physical feats, some of the daring stuff, people just jumping from all over the place. I mean, and like dexterity piano, I'm almost tired of it now because there's always somebody that can just play 2 pianos at a time, play multiple melodies, frequencies, whatever. I'm like, gosh, I remember taking piano lessons, you know what I'm saying?
Simple things.
There's no way I would get from a piano lesson to what these people are doing.
Yeah.
Because that's something that they've taken in on a whole nother level. So
I got to tell you, you done changed my life with that about the laugh therapy. Family, let me pull up my little face so you can see what listen, family, Dr. Kamau Kokayi got me practicing laughter from my heart. I'm doing it now, but between 2 and 3 times a day, Doc.
Wow.
Okay.
Right.
And, you know, I'm a work in progress. So I'm just seeing what the experience is. And then I'm wearing the crystals with the laughter. And it's feeling great, Doc. It's feeling great, family. Because it's something to it with regen. There's something to laughing and stem cells. And I don't know nothing about anything past high school, but my intuition says, Doc, there got to be laughter and regeneration somewhere in the mix. Tell us.
There's a guy, Norman Cousins, who had, I believe it was cancer and stuff. And supposedly he cured himself through laughter.
Wow.
Now, I just don't remember all the details, but that was just something well known. And then in Chinese medicine is the impact on the heart, right? In terms of really freeing up that heart energy, right? Just, you know, and I remember for myself therapeutically, I had a case, I had myself had atrial fibrillation once. And the way I got out of it is through a deep belly laugh. Because I had to choose between closing up shop and going to get some help. And I'm like, I just came back from vacation. I got to work. So I said, all right, what can I do? Yeah. And I just remember I wanted to change the pressure in my thoracic cavity. And I understood then the connection of the heart, you know, to just the heart to laughter is one of the ways to nourish the heart and stuff, you know. So that's just an aside, man. That's just an aside. But
yeah, but that's rejuvenation, because the Taoists talk about the inner smile. And I remember reading a book when I was in my 20s, Doc, and it said this guy was in Tibet and he ran into this guy who looked like he was in his 20s. He said he was over 400 years old. He said, how'd you do it? And he said he smiled into his body 3 times a day, 15 minutes. I can't smile. I got to laugh. I got to giggle. That's what holds my attention. And I feel so much better.
Right.
Go ahead, Doc.
No, I'm just taking it in, Hank. I'm taking it in. So what I wanted to share today, I mean, we're actually sharing, you know, we're talking about this. You know, there's a whole thing around modeling, right? Believe it or not, when you work in any particular system, you're learning a model, right? And from that model determines how you perceive, right? And then how you react to different things that you perceive, and how you react to things that don't fit into your model, you know, and how you actually handle that, you know, that's actually part of the model, right? So when you realize that you're functioning in something that's very limited, right, then there's a question of how do you deal with things that fall outside of your model? And this is something that doctors have to face. You can confront it in different ways. You can say, well, we just don't know enough yet. You know, we have to learn more, right? You can just shrug and say, well, that's just the way it is. We're really just animals here for a short time, and the body's just going to have to go and stuff, right? Wow. Any number of ways that people deal with it. But the idea is that the more the model could actually approximate reality, the more you would better be able to make good decisions and actually, function within that model, because then you would have a better idea of what's going on, meaning that you would have to move beyond just a three-dimensional way of taking things in, because your five senses can't catch everything, right?
Right.
And if you got a whole system that's basically based on your five senses, it's going to come up short. Because right now, I am bathed and surrounded by all kind of energies. All the ancestors you just laid out have a presence that's here.
Wow.
Now, you see what I'm saying? They have a presence.
Yeah.
Are you actually seeing that or hearing that? You might feel it, but
Right.
it's there and stuff. So we got to do better with a model, because the material-based model that Western medicine largely functioned out of, being classical physics, it's like we're on to quantum mechanics and stuff within Western culture,
Yeah.
So basically, in trying to come up with models, I've looked at Ayurveda. I've looked at the Chinese model, 5-element model, and just the beauty of it in terms of taking aspects of nature and again seeing how they reproduce in the body, and understanding the emotional correlation with the different elements and the different organs. It's mind expanding, as opposed to like, show me, under the microscope what's going. It's like, no, not that that's not important, but it's not all about that. You know what I'm saying? So,
Right.
So what I chose to do is simplify it even further. And it's not like I can't say I've done this, because this is out there. But if I take the 4 elements, fire, air, water, and earth, now everything that's here has to be a reflection of those elements. So I try to boil it down to common denominators, understanding that when I say fire, I'm also talking about like fiery energy, the color red, explosive energy, fast metabolism, maybe, just not stable. And so I'm talking about a lot of different things, right? And the same thing if I say earth, maybe we're thinking about something that's more stable and solid, we talk about earth daddies, just really caring kind of energy, protective kind of energy, then what the earth does in terms of nourishing and stuff and allowing things to happen. So these become archetypal representations, not just for the element, but for the emotional style, the intellectual or mental style, I would say,
Wow.
as well as the body and the body's metabolism, what the body is prone to. If you think about fire, you might think on the one hand, it could be burnout. On the other hand, it could be a lot of inflammation and stuff that's going on, right? If you think about that earth person, or maybe is a little bit more sedentary, you might think about being obese. You might think about overweight, right? You might think about constipation, a little edema in the legs, right? So, and these are just, they're archetypes. So it's important to get comfortable with that, because no one person is just one element per se. So what I did, and I shared with you, Hank, and you can certainly share that with your listening audience, I put together a questionnaire, right? A questionnaire that help you better understand the elemental energy and how that manifests through you. Now, there's another level to this. I would like to say there's another level of making this model more real, in that there's a 5th element. And that 5th element has to do with spirit and consciousness. The 5th element actually looks to see to what degree you have actually transcended this plane in terms of your spirit and your thinking, which then affects how you relate to the different elements. Somebody that is like of a certain, consciousness, certain vibration, how they deal with the element fire is going to be different than somebody that got a low vibration and is using that fiery energy in a way that could even be abusive, right? So your level of consciousness, right, meaning the level to which you allow source energy to more fully express itself through you, right, is really key in understanding how you handle this elemental balance, right? Now, why am I even bothering doing this? Just come in, oh, doc, I got hypertension. I got this or that, right? Because those are just outer expressions of some kind of imbalance in terms of how you're handling these elements, right? Or maybe you're so materially oriented, right, that if we could just raise that a few notches, right, or help you to raise it a few notches, it would change everything around you. Your thinking would change everything around you. If you're the person that really doesn't have self-love, right, if that were to change, don't you think that would change these other elements around you? Don't you think all of a sudden you might be able to lose weight? Maybe your blood pressure will go down, right? Maybe your thyroid might power back up, because now you're actually taking care of yourself, taking your nutrients and eating right and stuff. So Hank, you see where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah. You make me think, Doc. You make me think of family. I was taking a trip to a mushroom conference in Detroit, and I caught the bus. I was going to Kalindi Aye's muscle. When he was alive, he had a Detroit psychedelic conference, Doc, and my feet was on the floor for hours. And then you know what? Yo, Doc, family, I looked at my feet and ankles, and I saw swelling. And I was like, uh-oh, that's heart flow, baby. So, I had to so that's when I started working on, exercising more, magnetizing, forgiving, all that heart thing that you're talking about, Doc.
But also that heart thing helped you to balance that water element.
Ha!
Because that water element, because you're a deep thinker. You got stuff going on that most people aren't really talking about and stuff, right?
Man, don't you start me, man.
So,
Doc, that's true. And because there's a fine line, family, there's a fine line between deep thinking and insanity. Doc, you know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about, right?
Tell us about deep thinking and insanity. How many folks I met more than one person who went to, I'm going to say it, I keep them anonymous. They went to Harvard Medical School and Harvard Law School and lost their rabbit ass mind, and they walking around looking like crazy folks in Bed-Stuy.
Wow.
Yeah, one guy walks Fulton Street, and one of the people that I know, he said, you know who that is? He's a Harvard graduate of law.
Wow.
So what you're saying is real, man. I always reference liquor stores. Yo, a lot of people brokenhearted or at the liquor store, at the churches too, but I'll be seeing the liquor stores.
But that's what we're talking about in terms of your consciousness, or like what spiritual tools do you have, right? If you don't have spiritual tools, you might turn to alcohol, right? Because you might turn to things that are more destructive, right? Unless you really can be coached or shown another way, in terms of how you might handle that, right? That's why coaching is such a big thing right now, because, yeah, fine, you're anxious and maybe you took a drug for a short time, but that respite that you got from that medication, unless you're really finding out, well, what's going on that I even got into this place, you can be doing yourself a serious disservice.
Seriously.
Seriously. Then that can be creating other stuff in your nervous system. You know, for a lot of folks that go into the Ivy League environment, I mean, look, I went to Cornell and I went to Yale Medical School, and I had to leave Yale for a year, right?
Wow.
I said, look, I told my parents, look, I don't know if I want to stay here. They all had a fit. And I said, you know what? Okay, I'm going to go back, right? But I need a year off after I pass my boards, which is like that demarcation point. So I just have to perform on the wards. But after I pass my boards and I'm midway through my clinicals, right? That way it's coasting afterwards, right? Midway, I'm taking a year off because that environment, and you got to understand, is the vibration of it, right? And the vibration, how do I say it? The racial overtones and undertones that are there, you can choose not to catch it. You can choose to ignore it. And mind you, this is in what, the 80s and stuff, you know, but all of that is there. So the idea of taking time off to re-infuse myself, you know, with other kind of vibrational energy, right? And in fact, I got involved with African culture, which for me, I feel like that saved my life.
I believe you.
My mental state. You understand? Because then you can choose to play that game. You're playing it on a higher level. Fine, you're making more money. You have titles, whatever. But ultimately, you're still dealing with somebody else's intelligence in terms of how they're dealing with stuff. And, you know, if you just stop for a minute, you have to say, well, this don't make sense. How is it that food can't really be related to your health? Remember, this is back in the day. It's like, how can you be a gastroenterologist and say what you eat doesn't make a difference and stuff, you know? Or how can you be a Black psychologist? And when I tell you, well, I'm interested in more than drugs, I don't know if I'm so much interested in drugs. I want to understand how people think. And then you're going to call me a fool because I want to learn all about the drugs. I mean,
you're right.
There's so many stories and stuff, right?
Yeah,
so,
you're right.
You know, and then I took the year off, and that's when I got involved with homeopathy, Chinese medicine, quantum physics, and African culture. That's a powerful combination. So when I went back with my future wife in tow, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right? And wrote my thesis on physics and medicine and blew my advisor's mind. But I was bringing in now another wisdom system and energy system. And at that point, you know, fine, you know, I can go through this, you know, but I've seen many people go through that experience and really struggle. And the people that went to HBCUs and functioned because they were rooted in another experience, had connections and everything, they seem to do much better in those environments. Right.
Doc, you just hit the nail on the head. You know, God bless Martin Luther King, but I don't believe he was really directed correctly, because to this day, there are ethnic social groups that are segregated. Religious groups that are segregated have their own economics, have their own educational system, have their own financial, and the way they navigate through countries and through societies, they just say, we're all for each other and nobody else, and everyone outside of our social segregation clan is disposable. So go ahead, Doc.
You understand why that can't happen with folks. The experience of Black people here is not coming out of that kind of singularity in terms of an environment or a culture with different norms and things. We were taking one from different groups, right? Even though it might have been very similar, but all that was broken down here. So anybody's reference point to African culture as a person of African descent here is going to be different. So there's not the same root. And the root, you know, relative to we all come from Africa or whatever, that's not strong enough to hold any kind of group together. So then you have all kind of black folks doing all kind of interesting and all kind of stuff, right? But that core root is not the same as other immigrant communities. You can see even see the difference from folks that are from the islands in terms of how they function. There's more of a core in terms of that cultural dynamic.
Yeah. They have a level of social segregation. The brothers and sisters from the Caribbean to survive here in America. I have more rapport with the Caribbean brothers, Doc family, about herbs, Capadula, monkey ladder, devil doer, granny back, locust bark, and the brothers from Jamaica talking about ironwood and mixing it with, this bush. And Americans are like the ones that came up from the South. They're like, what? Herbs? I want to go see my doctor. They've been conditioned. They've been, conditioned in a different mindset.
More than that. Then you have the whole, remember this term, the black bourgeoisie.
Oh, I gotta sit back. Go ahead, Doc.
No, it's not. I came out of that class,
Wow.
Father, was professional, like business person, military man, politician. Mother's a teacher. You living in the suburbs and stuff, and that becomes a whole, mind twist in and of itself, because then your values are aligning to certain things, and you create a difference between yourself and other people through this African diasporic experience, right?
Wow.
Right. And unless you really have the chance or the interest in just reflecting on what this whole reality is, or like myself, you had an opportunity to go to Cornell, and there's a Black Studies program there that's strong. There's a Black living dormitory that's there. And all of a sudden, everything begins to shift and come into place. And you begin to really understand the actual history that's going down here and stuff, and it's still happening, right? You get to understand. And so that's why it's important, like in me just even sharing what I'm talking about, the elements in this fifth element, is really to inspire younger folks, right? To really understand that there's just more to what you're learning in school, right? And what's nice about an elemental model like I did, I'm relying more on the right brain in terms of correspondences, right? These are like just images, but they're images that are rooted in material reality in terms of the elements and things on this plane, right? So ultimately, it's a model that I can apply. And it doesn't mean that if you let me give you an example. Let's say you're diagnosed with hypertension, and basically you're told you're going to have to take these pills the rest of your life. And in fact, if they start you off with a water pill and you deplete your minerals, you're going to need even more medication because now you're running short on magnesium or whatever else, right? But let's say that you have hypertension, and if you think about different classes of drugs, right? There are drugs that work on the heart, meaning the drugs that just slow your heart down, right? There are drugs that work on your mind because you're anxious, right? And they need to deal with your mind, right? So then there's all kind of anti-anxiety stuff, right? And then you got drugs that cause your blood vessels to dilate. Amlodipine, nifedipine, right? Same thing that magnesium does, okay? But a little bit more sophisticated in terms of dilating, right? And then you got all your different class of diuretics. You got your loop diuretics, you got your really serious diuretics, furosemide and Bumex, whatever. But all of this to get that excess water off your body, which is usually caused by if your heart gets too weak or your kidneys are leaking protein or you got low thyroid. I mean, there's a whole clinical differential, right? But my point is, when certain elements are out of balance in your body, fine. If the issue is let's say with the earth, you got too much earth energy, right? Those folks really have it simple because you know what? If they really lose weight, their blood pressure goes down. You get what I'm saying?
Mm,
And there's
yeah.
an aspect of that earth energy in any number of us that have been hanging out on this plane for a while because you tend to gain weight. There's just excess in the body. You drop weight, pressure goes down. But for some people, it's really much more profound, right? That's why the GLP-1 is such a big craze, right? Because it changes the hormone signaling in a way that all of a sudden, you know, your intestinal motility changes and stuff, and you're just able to calm down,
What's
right?
GOP1? What's that?
Um, that's actually all the Ozempic and all of the drugs,
Oh,
right? I'm blocking on the names of them, right? But
yeah, yeah, that's all right.
it's a class of medication that's very popular with respect
Okay.
to weight loss, right?
Yeah, because I was like, I heard of Ozempic, but GOP1, I was like, I ain't gonna play. I'm
Yeah,
playing dumb, Doc. I don't know, fam. If I don't know, I'm gonna ask.
I'm just so used to saying that, you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah,
thank you for reminding me, because if you had trouble with it, I'm sure the listening audience was like, "What's he saying?" So,
yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna play. I'm gonna be dumb because that's being dumb. You can learn so much more because the more you learn, the more you realize you're dumb. What a
right,
dichotomy, right, Doc?
right. There you go. You know, keep that empty vessel, right?
Yeah.
So,
Don't get stuffed with an ego top off of your coffee cup of life, family. Stay dumb and learn some. Stay dumb
right.
and learn some. That's a good bar. Stay dumb and learn
So, you
some.
know, the trick is being able to work. Fine, you have a medical condition, but it's trying to look at what's behind it and how to approach it. And to be frank, we have so many tools now because we have tools that are more on the physical level. Like, let's say that you tend toward anxiety, you know, and that's elevating your blood pressure. Well, you can do grounding. You can get a grounding mat. You can check out the earthing documentary on YouTube to really understand what it means to have your electrical energy shift in your body and go out through your feet. You want to check that,
Yeah.
right? You can do that. You can do, there's actually an FDA approved device to lower blood pressure through breathing. Right. Right.
Wow.
You can work on that level, particularly if you're someone that, you know, has an imbalance in that fire or air element and just tend to be nervy in that way, or it's just too much energy that's there, right? That breathing is really key, right? To settle you down. So whereas the earth element person that got blood pressure, I'm gonna say, get your butt to the gym. You gotta start working, you know, and moving your body on that level. So a lot of this advice, people have, you know, you don't have to understand this model to work out of it. So people are working out of it, meaning a good doctor will tell you that, yes, you need to exercise, right? But they're doing it within a medical model, right? The root of this is something different, you know.
Interesting.
Right. So the spirit piece now, that's the huge piece, right? The spirit consciousness piece, right? To really look to see how much are you identifying with the aspect of consciousness that's functioning through your body, or how much are you identifying with the aspect of consciousness that reflects your divine nature and that reflects something that's much deeper about yourself. That you need to understand for yourself, right? And that's something that this whole life is about, expanding that. The whole life is about putting you in situations that you may not like, that may be uncomfortable, but it causes you to have to grow. You know, unless you want to
Yeah.
do something stupid and set yourself back in incarnation or something like that. But you know, hopefully you get the training to actually take on what you're calling adversity and make it look like it is an opportunity. It's an
You know,
opportunity to grow. You know what I'm
th-
saying?
that's so powerful what you're saying. I'm starting to see a gradual ripple of people saying or emphasizing the importance of forgiveness for
Mm,
the purpose of elevating consciousness,
mm, mm. Your own.
your own.
Because if that's an energy, that's like me having a big scar, you know, and that scar is blocking the flow of energy, is blocking the flow of love, right? You block the flow of love, you are starving yourself. You know, that's like
Mm,
restricting oxygen and stuff, right? So that keeps you down in a lower atmosphere here, right? So yeah, now forgiving doesn't mean forgetting,
right,
know? But
right.
at the same time, this, you know, you see all these movies where there's all this revenge is always the theme. You know, somebody is revenging somebody. You did my daddy, you did this. It's like, yo, you know, and not that the thought would not cross anybody's mind if they felt they were really, you know, stepped upon, right? But, you know, the question is, what is it you want to create for yourself? You want your life just to be about that, right? It's almost like if you look at all the horrible things that happen to people in the system here, and according to where you're at, yes, you have to speak up, but you can be consumed by watching, you know, the annex of Trump and other, just all the stuff that's going. You can
Oh
be
man,
consumed by the news.
I know people who are, and
Right,
sisters really got to be careful because
right,
I know some sisters, man. They're like, I want to die. Trump got elected. I want to die. I've heard this on the phone, Doc. I heard this on the phone, family. Sisters saying they want to die because Trump got elected. They swore that Kamala was going to win, and it's like a what they call it, cognitive dissonance, Doc.
right, right.
What's that all about?
No, people, like, if your spirit is not really centered, right, you're going to believe in things really outside of yourself or outside of your understanding, right? So people would get caught up between left and right, you know, like at the beginning, which you had spiritual masters that had transcended religion, transcended race, gender. It's all about that. It's transcending this human thing that's been put upon us and stuff. So you can't do that if you're diving in bed with the Republicans or diving in bed with who you think the Democrats are and stuff. It just doesn't work because contradictions are contradictions. So you want to you just want to step back. And if you're not clear about something, don't do anything. You know, don't do anything. You don't have to be forced or allow yourself to be convinced of something. There were many people that are convinced that Trump was going to be the best thing for this country and stuff. But I mean, who knows and stuff. I mean, look at what's happening now. I'm like, oh crap.
We
Folks
don't know what's going to happen next.
don't know what, you know. So I was talking to a colleague of mine. He's about, I got this feeling about nuclear war. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
Yeah.
it's like, yo. So I rub my head because like every other week, my group, we do something called the Oasis of Healing, where we invoke the love vibration. We had that laughter for one of our sessions that Hank had gone to, but
I'm still on it.
we create that space of this higher vibrational state. So you can come with your sick pancreas, your blood pressure, you come or just come to experience it, just to relax, right? But the whole thing about the placebo effect, we are the placebo, it's our consciousness, right? It's like the doctors yesterday, Hank had one talking about how your thoughts actually affect your biology. It's biology of belief, you know? So why not cultivate that and use that in your self-care, you know, or work with people. My group, the Multidimensional Healing Collective, we work with sound, light, and intention.
Wow.
Intention doesn't mean that nutrition, all those other things aren't important, but sound, light, and intention being overlooked.
Yeah.
And that includes the magnetism. That includes
Yeah.
includes visualization, includes Reiki, pranic healing, and stuff. We can go on and on. You know, it
Yeah.
includes things that more neurologists are using, cranial stimulation in different ways, right? I have a device called the Origin that I've seen help Parkinson's, dementia, because it bathes the brain in light and sound at a
Oh,
frequency, you know?
powerful.
Right, right. So, but that technology is available, is what I'm saying. And the whole chemical piece that we keep focusing on, if everything really by definition is in frequency, everything vibrates, right? Water goes from an ice cube to water to steam and then actually to sound, but it's still
Ooh.
water. It's just different vibrations, a different scale, right? And that's just important for us to really appreciate that and what that means for us in our own function. I'm getting distracted. I'm watching.
Doc, you know what it is? You just spoke light, frequency, and sound. Family, look at this. Look at these colors. Can y'all see this? Hold on a second. Let me just do this real quick.
Look, I
Light,
put my
frequency,
red
and
light
sound.
on myself like 3 to 4 times a week. I got a big red light that I bathe my body in.
Imagine if we become as pure as laser light in our heart and in our mind and in our daily thoughts. These are the lights I use for exploring crystal activation, Doc. These are
Right.
lasers. So go ahead. I want to shut it off now.
No, that's really interesting because I've heard about people talk about the impact if you look at quote unquote tablets or hieroglyphs and you shine light on them in terms of the
Wow.
frequency, how that affects things. I mean, even in Chinese medicine, ear acupuncture, the ear looks like the kidneys, right? Kidneys
Right.
is like core energy. So we had the National Acupuncture Detox Association. I was the second doc that was involved, signed up with that. And basically through ear acupuncture, dealt with addiction. It was the ear.
Hmm.
But guess what? And I'm blocking on the doctor's name, but if they shine a certain frequency of light, the points would shift.
Oh.
Right. And now we start talking about the body in terms of a fractal geometry, in terms of, because you got the whole body on the eyes, iridology, on the ears, scalp acupuncture, Korean hand acupuncture, right? Japanese hara diagnosis, the whole body represented there and stuff. You got foot reflexology, the whole body there. So, and you got a whole system in Chinese medicine where you can represent the whole body on a limb and you can turn it around. The neck might be here at the shoulder or it might be at the wrist, you know, and it's a whole different concept of looking at the body, right?
Doc, you said something that just, I'm a student of Master Yao and Master Yama. These are Tantra teachers.
Mm.
And I met a classmate in the Tantra retreat that was known, they called him the womb sucker. And he would use his breath to suck tumors out of uteruses. And he had a good success rate, but I lost touch with him. So, that's some interesting stuff because now we're going back to indigenous
Right.
methodologies, where, indigenous people using breath to suck discordant energies out of what you just described. And I just had a flash memory of
Right.
that. What you talking about, something on the shoulder. Go ahead, Doc, please.
No, I'm thinking about, so for me, once I realized that I was going to work with more than just a biochemical medical model, right? When you shift into an energetic model, that's when you really have to work on yourself, right? Because now there's all kind of things and you're always a work in progress, but hopefully you're learning as you go along and you're shedding different kinds of conditionings and patterns of thinking that keep you from being fully able to to experience consciousness and your awareness expanding. There are all these blocks. And, you know, so as I mentioned, I had that big one removed by leaving school for a year and getting involved with African culture and just other models of medicine and quantum physics. It's like, wait a
That
second.
saved you.
Yes.
That saved you.
Right.
Because I know a medical, I know a sister, Doc. She's an ancestor. She was so brilliant. She graduated top of the, what do you call it? In Harvard, what do they call cum de law or the creme of the creme or whatever they call that?
Okay. Right.
She was the top. But when I met her, I was
Right.
knee deep into like ayahuasca, psychedelics. She wanted to take it every day. But it was like her consciousness, this earth couldn't contain her consciousness. And she checked out. She literally shut her body down and said, I'm out of here. And she left. And she was beautiful.
Right.
But brilliant. But this time-space continuum couldn't contain her. Because she was like, there's too many limitations. And what you're saying, you saved your soul when you took that break.
Yeah, and by the same token, I've seen many people going through that kind of Ivy League experience, or just being in a different cultural reality, really struggle, really need to have all kind of interventions and things made, because one, you're still young and developing when you go away. I mean, you're what, 18, 19 and stuff, and it's like things are happening, you know. And you know, some people, let's say you're a real water element, you feel things deeply, you know. That can really activate you and throw you off. You get what I'm saying? Right.
You just said something about hold that water, because I have a niece who's in med school and she's on summer break, and she got upset because I didn't respond to a text that I never got. And she said, you know, I'm Cancerian. I take it so I'm sensitive about, I had to take a picture of my text for her to calm down.
Wow.
Just what you're saying about that water sensitivity.
Well, that might be a little bit too much fire, and her nervous system, the air element, is just really strained and stuff. So her communication is going to be affected and stuff, and it's expressed in a fiery way. Right. And that might be the best that she can do right now, given the balance in her body. Right. So
yeah,
it's like you want to be able to, you know, suggest and like, wait a second. So let's figure out why you were so upset. Like, what's really going on here?
Yeah. And I never got the text. And I showed the emptiness. I hadn't texted her since January, and she swore that the technology is impeccable. Family, those cell phones ain't up to par. They're smart, dumb phones. Don't make it gospel.
I've lost money like that. You try to do any kind of trading, your technology ain't right, please. But anyway,
it happened. Yeah.
But
about that water, tell us more about water, Doc. Because you know,
I mean, gosh, I feel like I'm learning more about it myself, and it's the idea. I think one of the key signature moments, at least in as a practitioner, is the work of Dr. Emoto in terms of understanding the degree in which memory can be imprinted on water, right? And just so one of my projects, I'm trying to think if I should even mention this yet, but I'm going to wait before I mention it.
Yeah, wait, because you know it.
Water. Let's put it this way: there was an experiment of the now deceased doctor just credited with discovering the HIV virus, right? Luke Montagna, right? But they did this experiment with HIV in water, understanding that once the HIV is in water, it changes the energetic blueprint of that, right? So you can digitize energy, right, in terms of whatever measurement, however you're going to represent that. So, but what they did is then they sent that signal through a computer to another location, right? And then they put that signal in another water, and guess what? Another thing of water, they were able to detect the HIV, the virus there, right?
It was or they wasn't?
It was. They could detect it, right? So I'm just trying to suggest that, but think about it. So you might say, wow, but think about when you pick up a phone, you're speaking, it's changing that whole thing into something that's being sent electronically and it's coming out the other end. So what we're doing is getting greater facility of how we can bring different scales of energy together. Something that's being expressed on one scale, you can translate that into a way that you can appreciate it on another scale, right? Because really, we're talking here, but our brains are in a dark little box. And it's just using the stimuli around us that comes in, and it begins literally to create that mind's picture of what's going on and stuff, you know?
I would love. You know what, Doc? I've been experimenting with intentional visualization to totally open the pineal gland, and just so that I want to be able to. Family, I'm practicing. You know, and I haven't got there yet, but I seen a video where they showed a woman, a young lady, had her third eye open so much she was blindfolded, and she was able to read a book or a newspaper.
Yeah. Yeah. That
Have you ever ran into somebody like that?
I gave a presentation that people can get. It's called Blueprint for Immortality. And part of what I was talking about are schools where people are actually being taught, you know,
Wow.
especially young kids, right? Or
Wow.
just being taught to, you know, what are you perceiving and stuff? You know, they're blindfolded or whatever, you know, stuff is just held up and they're figuring it out. So, you know, it's a matter of, like you mentioned, intention, you know, and people, we are not harnessing intention at the level that, you know, to reflect a bigger vision of what's possible. You know, like my intention in having this energetic healing and these consciousness transformation sessions that we offer people is to help people grow, to at least get to the level of heart consciousness. Because once the heart is open, then we can counter what I'm calling a consciousness deficit disorder, right?
Consciousness deficit
disorder, where you don't recognize that the life that's in you is the same life that's in everything around you. That's not, you might be able to say the words, but it's just harder for you to actually experience that, right? So it makes it easier for people to do horrible things to each other and horrible things, you know, I mean, just to the planet and stuff. So that kind of imbalance can only be tolerated for so long. You know,
wow.
it's just only going to be tolerated for so long, and then something else will cycle in. So we'll see. Right. But
Go ahead.
you know, I'm not sure. This is kind of free flowing.
Yeah, man.
I don't know if there's something else that I could focus on, or you would like me to talk about. I figure we got just a little time left.
Okay, we got hour. You know what, Doc? Tell us. You know what? Let me share this, and then you can springboard on this. I had one time when I was doing a lot of massages. I went to a retreat, and there was somebody brought in this lady, and she had a smudge look on her face, like this. And while I was massaging it, you know, massage is a lot of intuition. I started massaging under her armpits, and she started laughing. And she laughed for about almost 40 to 50 minutes. And afterwards, she looked like a whole new person. And she never went back. The next time I saw her, just at African Arts Festival, she was still smiling. How important is like pressure points and you know, especially the heart? Because a lot of folks is flopping and dropping. I'm hearing about, you know, funeral homes being backlogged on services, and a lot of it's heart related.
Well, that is, a heart starts beating about, was it 22 weeks in to the pregnancy, right? And the
Mm,
heart at that time, once that happens, it really opens you up to the larger conscious flow that's here, meaning it's like earth connecting with spirit, in terms of your
mm,
body and that spirit that's in there. But now the heart is beating and that actually connects you. So, by the same token, the heart is really central to our existence, both physically and metaphysically, right? So, physically, um, if the heart's energy is somehow blocked, and you can look at the arteries as being the tributaries to the heart, or the heart being like the source for this life, right? In the same way that trees are rooted into something, right? All the arteries and lymph, everything is rooted into the heart. So, so much of what we do, both physically and emotionally, is going to impact that, and people die of broken hearts. Think about all the words, that we use in reference to the heart.
lion heart.
I mean, naturally, I can't remember a phrase, right? But I mean,
Uh,
there,
um,
there's so many phrases relating to
yeah,
broken hearts.
yeah.
Um,
I met a woman one time, Doc. Tell me about this. She was a woman in her 60s and she ran up 6 flights. She had a heart transplant. And you know what she told me, Doc? Family. She said when she first got her heart
right.
transplant, she was getting um, like movie visuals,
The
but
first
now
person,
this is a
right,
sister, but
right.
she saw like a white, family, and she was experienced. It was almost like the heart was playing back a record.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing, right? And there's actually papers, and that's not uncommon, where a person gets a heart transplant and all of a sudden they're taking on the memories, the likes and dislikes of the previous person. In one case, they actually solved a murder from it, in
Wow.
terms of and because the heart, I believe in 91, it was discovered that the heart has its own nervous system, about 40,000 different nerve cells that are independent of the brain, right? In other words, the heart has its own brain. So within that, it has its own ability to hold on to memories and things, right? So that's why the heart is so amazing on so many different levels and stuff. So you can imagine then what that means on that, just that 3D level in terms of memory and mind. So the heart has its own mind in that respect, right? But you said a few things. I'm trying to remember. There was something else you said I wanted to respond to.
Well,
Um,
she told me that she saw the moment of death
mm,
from the heart trans. She saw where it was a car crash, and she
right,
said after that, she said she never, and it was a young woman. She said it was a young white woman. She and her family was, all blonde hair, blue eyed,
right.
brownie, brown hair every now and then. But she said that the moment of death was a car crash, and after that, she didn't have any more memories. But this woman was, I'm talking about, this is a senior woman that had a heart of a woman who was like 21, and she was leaping. Up the flights of steps and everything. And I was like, whoa,
I
I
forgot
had
how
never
many.
seen anything like that in my life. Go ahead.
I forgot how many heart transplants Rockefeller had. Right, John D. Right.
Whoa.
You know,
I forgot about that.
right. People that are
Yeah.
wealthy, they will replace organs.
Yeah.
They
And
want
Steve Jobs had a bad liver.
you want to
Remember
stay
that?
long enough. I just remember John D. Right,
Well, he
but
had like 13 or 30 heart transplants or
I,
something.
I
It was
don't
a
know.
bizarre
It
number.
was something right. It was something really huge and stuff. Right, but
Yeah.
so the stuff I'm talking about, imparted self-care, right? Because once you have a model, and if you fill out that questionnaire, you'll get an idea, and I have sessions where I review that, and I can tell you a lot of things that you can consider doing even in terms of laboratory work, right?
I'm going to put that in the show description, family. I just learned how to copy and paste your whole PDF, Doc. So it's going to
Oh,
be
wow.
in the show description after we get off the air. I'm going to put it right in this show's description. Family, take a look at it. It's extensive and it's very interesting because you speak on the different elements.
Yeah. So I mean, within that framework, we're all very interesting. And we all definitely got a little journey here that we're going through. And it's nice to get help with that because the answers aren't always obvious, right? And there's usually layers of trauma that can go back previous generations. So when you see that fifth element is blocked, there's a lot of other kind of work to be done, and as you clear out things and expand your awareness, you have greater capacity to engage those other elements, right? Right.
Hit the like button. That's what it's pushing. But you got a bunch of other comments.
Hey, is there any questions? Why don't I do that for a few? And then I'm going to run off because I'm having a late dinner tonight, it looks like.
Okay. I'm going to show you the comments. Some is peace and love from Vermont. Mike, right. Thanks for joining us. Get conscious, stay conscious. Ozempic fat burn medication. Yo, I heard there's a whole lot of complication with that medication, but you didn't hear it from me, as they say on Saturday Night Live. Right. A living color. They discovered underwater city off the coast of Louisiana. Wow.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I'm sure we'll hear more about that.
Yeah, H3O. Dr. Emoto mentioned in the movie What the Bleep Do We Know?
Right.
Somebody said, Yo, Tep, giving you acknowledgement. Braveheart. And that's about it, Doc. Go ahead and eat, man. This was great. This was a great show. Family, like, subscribe, share. Doc, I want to keep you coming back, man, because your heart message is needed. It's a needed message, bro. And repetition is education.
I hear that, man. Definitely.
Yeah.
Me too. Okay.
Yeah. So thank you again. Family, chant healing, peace for the world, so we don't have this beautiful spaceship go up in nuclear matches because of some cross-eyed agenda of some nearsighted leaders. Because that's what it is, right, Doc? Cross-eyed agenda of some nearsighted leaders.
There you go.
Yeah. So we're going to go out with this song from remember Brother Hassan? What was it? The group called? You'll remember it when you hear it. That's what you're talking about, Doc.
All right.
The heart. All right. Go ahead and eat, brother.
Man. Take care.
Take care. And good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.